Before humans ruled the planet, Earth belonged to predators that sound almost impossible. Giant snakes longer than buses, sharks big enough to attack whales, crocodile monsters that may have hunted dinosaurs, and saber-toothed cats built like living weapons. These were not movie monsters. They were real animals. Today, we're opening the extinct archives and counting down 15 predators that once ruled land, rivers, skies, and ancient oceans. First, Smilodon. Smilodon is often called the saber-toothed tiger, but that name is a little misleading. It was not actually a tiger. It was a powerful prehistoric cat built for a completely different kind of hunting. Instead of speed and long chases, Smilodon was designed for strength, ambush, and control. Its body was muscular, with strong front limbs that helped it wrestle large prey to the ground. It was not a sleek sprinter like a cheetah. It was more like a living trap, built to explode from cover and overpower animals much larger than itself. Its most famous feature was, of course, the enormous saber teeth. These teeth could grow around 7 inches long, but they were not used like regular biting weapons. Smilodon likely used them with precision, targeting vulnerable areas after its prey had already been pinned down. Those teeth were impressive, but also fragile compared with thick, crushing teeth, so the animal probably needed to be careful. Smilodon lived in the Americas during the Ice Age, and hunted large herbivores such as bison, camels, horses, and possibly young mammoths. It lived in a world filled with giant prey and dangerous rivals. What makes Smilodon so fascinating is that it was not just a bigger lion. It was a completely different experiment in predator design. A cat built not around speed, but around power, patience, and one devastating final bite. 2. Titanoboa. Titanoboa was not just a snake. It was the largest snake known to science, and it lived in a world that was hot, humid, and almost impossible for modern humans to imagine. This massive reptile lived around 60 million years ago, not long after the dinosaurs disappeared. Its fossils were found in Colombia, in ancient tropical environments filled with swamps, rivers, and dense vegetation. In that world, Titanoboa may have reached over 40 feet in length and weighed more than a ton. To understand how terrifying that is, imagine an anaconda. Then stretch it to the length of a school bus and make it heavy enough to dominate almost anything sharing its river system. Titanoboa probably hunted like modern large constrictors. It may have ambushed prey near water, striking suddenly and wrapping its huge body around victims with crushing force. Its diet likely included fish, crocodile-like reptiles, and other animals that lived around the ancient swamp. But Titanoboa's size also tells us something about the world it lived in. Snakes are cold-blooded, which means their body temperature depends heavily on the environment. A snake this large suggests that its habitat was extremely warm. Titanoboa was not a fast predator in the dramatic movie monster sense. It did not need to be. It ruled by patience, camouflage, and overwhelming strength. In the ancient swamp, the water itself could have been hiding a predator longer than a bus. 3. Megalodon. Megalodon is one of the most famous extinct predators in history, and for good reason. It was a gigantic shark that ruled the oceans for millions of years, long before modern humans existed. This was not just a slightly larger great white shark. Megalodon was in a completely different league. Estimates vary, but many scientists believe it may have reached lengths of around 50 to 60 feet, possibly more. Its teeth alone could be over 7 inches long, thick, serrated, and built for slicing through flesh and bone. Megalodon lived in warm oceans and likely hunted large marine mammals, including prehistoric whales. Its bite force may have been among the strongest of any known animal. Instead of simply chasing small prey, Megalodon could attack enormous animals and disable them with brutal efficiency. One of the most chilling ideas about Megalodon is how it may have hunted. Fossil evidence suggests it could bite into the fins, chest, or vital areas of large whales, crippling them before delivering a final attack. It was not just big, it was strategic, but Megalodon eventually vanished. Changes in climate, shifting oceans, and the decline or movement of its prey may have played a role. Competition with other predators may also have mattered. For millions of years, though, Megalodon was the nightmare beneath the waves. A predator so large that even whales were not safe. 4. Terror bird. The terror bird sounds like a nickname, but it fits almost too well. These giant flightless birds, known scientifically as Phorus racids, were among the dominant land predators of South America for millions of years. While many people imagine birds as small, harmless creatures, terror birds were something completely different. Some species stood taller than a human. They had long, powerful legs, sharp claws, and huge hooked beaks designed for striking and tearing. They could not fly, but they could run, and that made them dangerous in open environments where speed mattered. The skull of a terror bird looked almost like a weapon, its beak curved downward like an axe, and some scientists believe it may have used powerful downward strikes to attack prey. Instead of biting like a mammal, it may have hammered, stabbed, and torn. For a long time, South America was isolated from North America, allowing strange animals to evolve there. Terror birds became apex predators in that separate world. They hunted mammals, reptiles, and possibly anything small enough to overpower. Their reign began to fade after land connections formed between North and South America. New mammalian predators entered the continent, ecosystems changed, and the terror birds eventually disappeared. But for millions of years, the idea of a giant predatory bird chasing prey across ancient plains was not fantasy. It was daily life. 5. Dire wolf. The dire wolf became famous through pop culture, but the real animal was already impressive without any fantasy added to it. Dire wolves lived during the Ice Age across North America and parts of South America. They looked somewhat similar to modern wolves, but they were heavier, stockier, and built with a stronger skull and jaws. This was not just a bigger gray wolf. It was a powerful predator adapted to hunting large prey in a world full of giants. Dire wolves likely hunted animals such as horses, bison, camels, and other Ice Age herbivores. They may have lived and hunted in packs, giving them the ability to take down prey much larger than themselves. Their teeth and jaws suggest they were capable of crushing bone more effectively than modern wolves. One of the most famous fossil sites for dire wolves is the La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles, where thousands of their remains have been found. This suggests they were common predators and may have been drawn to trapped animals, only to become trapped themselves. The dire wolf's extinction likely came after major climate changes and the disappearance of many large prey animals at the end of the Ice Age. As the world warmed and ecosystems shifted, the predator built for that older world vanished with it. The dire wolf was not a mythical monster. It was a real pack hunter from the age of mammoths. 6. Short-faced bear. The short-faced bear was one of the most intimidating land predators of the Ice Age. Known as Arctatus, this bear lived in North America and could stand incredibly tall when rising on its hind legs. Some estimates suggest it may have stood over 11 feet tall upright, making it one of the largest bear-like predators ever known. But what made the short-faced bear especially interesting was its body shape. It had long legs compared with modern bears, which led scientists to debate whether it was a fast-running hunter, a scavenger, or a mix of both. Either way, an animal this large would have been a major force in its environment. Its name comes from its relatively short, broad face. It had powerful jaws and a body capable of intimidating almost any competitor. Even if it did not always hunt live prey, it could likely steal kills from wolves, saber-toothed cats, and other predators. Imagine being an Ice Age predator that has just brought down a bison, only to see a massive bear approaching across the open ground. Fighting may not have been worth it. The short-faced bear disappeared near the end of the Ice Age. Around the same time, many large mammals vanished. Its extinction was likely tied to climate change, habitat shifts, and the loss of large prey. It was a predator, scavenger, and walking threat all in one. 7. Dunkleosteus. Long before sharks ruled the seas, Dunkleosteus was one of the most terrifying predators in the ancient ocean. This armored fish lived around 360 million years ago during the Devonian period, a time sometimes called the Age of Fishes. Dunkleosteus could grow over 20 feet long, though exact sizes vary by species and specimen. Its head and front body were covered in thick, bony armor, making it look like a swimming tank. But the most frightening part was its mouth. Dunkleosteus did not have teeth like a shark. Instead, it had sharp, bony plates that worked like giant shears. When it opened and closed its jaws, those plates could slice through prey with incredible force. Scientists believe it had one of the most powerful bites of any fish known from the fossil record. It likely hunted other armored fish, early sharks, and almost anything it could catch. In a sea filled with strange and heavily protected animals, Dunkleosteus evolved into a predator that could cut through armor. Its hunting style may have included rapid mouth opening, creating suction that helped pull prey inward. Then the jaws closed like blades. Dunkleosteus eventually disappeared during extinction events that affected many Devonian marine animals. But for its time, it was one of the ocean's top predators. If Megalodon was the later nightmare shark, Dunkleosteus was the ancient armored executioner. 8. Mosasaurus. Mosasaurus was not a dinosaur, even though it lived during the age of dinosaurs. It was a giant marine reptile, more closely related to modern lizards and snakes than to creatures like T-Rex. During the late Cretaceous period, Mosasaurus and its relatives became some of the most powerful predators in the oceans. Some species grew to enormous lengths, with long bodies, strong tails, and jaws filled with sharp conical teeth. Unlike fish, mosasaurs breathed air, so they had to surface. But underwater, they were deadly. Their bodies were adapted for swimming, and later forms had powerful tails that helped them move with speed and control. Mosasaurus likely hunted fish, turtles, ammonites, birds, smaller marine reptiles, and possibly other mosasaurs. Its jaws were designed to grab and hold slippery prey, and some mosasaurs had a second set of teeth-like structures in the roof of the mouth, helping pull food backward. The oceans of the Cretaceous were not peaceful blue spaces. They were filled with giant reptiles, armored fish, and shelled creatures. Mosasaurus was one of the animals sitting near the top of that violent food web. Its reign ended with the asteroid impact that wiped out the non-avian dinosaurs around 66 million years ago. When the Old World collapsed, Mosasaurus vanished with it, but before that ending, it was one of the ocean's final great reptilian rulers. 9. Gorgonops. Gorgonops looked like something caught between a reptile, a mammal, and a nightmare. It lived during the Permian period, long before the dinosaurs. Gorgonops belonged to a group called therapsids, ancient relatives of mammals. That means this predator was part of the long evolutionary story that eventually led to us, which is both fascinating and slightly uncomfortable. Gorgonops had a powerful skull, strong jaws, and large saber-like canine teeth. It walked on 4 legs and likely hunted other Permian animals, including large herbivores that shared its environment. Some species were around the size of a large dog or wolf, while others were much bigger. The Permian world was very different from the one we know today. Continents were joined into the supercontinent Pangaea. Climates were harsh, and life on land was still experimenting with forms that seem strange by modern standards. Gorgonops was one of the apex predators of that world. Its saber teeth made it an early example of a hunting design that would appear again much later in animals like Smilodon. Evolution apparently liked the idea of long, stabbing canines, but Gorgonops disappeared during the Permian-Triassic extinction, the worst mass extinction in Earth's history. Most species on the planet vanished. Gorgonops was a ruler of the world before dinosaurs, erased during the planet's most devastating reset. 10. Megalania. Megalania was basically the nightmare version of a monitor lizard. This giant reptile lived in Australia during the Pleistocene and was related to modern monitor lizards, including the Komodo dragon. But Megalania was much larger. Exact size estimates vary, but it may have reached lengths of over 15 feet, possibly more depending on the individual and interpretation. Australia during the Ice Age was filled with strange giant animals, including huge wombat-like herbivores, giant kangaroos, and massive birds. Megalania would have been one of the most dangerous predators in that environment. Like modern monitor lizards, it may have had sharp teeth, powerful claws, and possibly venom-related adaptations. There is debate about the exact role of venom in its hunting, but even without that, a giant monitor lizard would have been terrifying enough. Megalania likely ambushed prey, using a combination of stealth, bite force, and endurance. It may have hunted large mammals, scavenged carcasses, and competed with other predators. Its extinction likely happened alongside the disappearance of much of Australia's megafauna. Climate change and human arrival may both have played roles, though the details remain debated. Megalania is one of those predators that feels disturbingly recent. It did not live hundreds of millions of years ago. It lived in a world much closer to ours. A giant lizard once walked Australia, and for anything smaller than itself, the ground was not safe. 11. Sarcosuchus. Sarcosuchus is often nicknamed the Super Croc, and honestly, that name is hard to argue with. This enormous crocodile-like reptile lived during the Cretaceous period, around the same time as dinosaurs. It could reach lengths of over 30 feet, possibly closer to 40 in some estimates, making it one of the largest crocodile-like predators ever discovered. Sarcosuchus lived in ancient river systems in what is now Africa and South America. Its long jaws were filled with strong teeth, and its body was protected by heavy armor-like scales. It probably spent much of its time in water waiting near riverbanks for prey to come close, and that prey may have included dinosaurs. While it probably did not chase dinosaurs across land, Sarcosuchus could have ambushed animals drinking at the water's edge. Modern crocodiles already use this strategy with terrifying success. Now imagine that strategy scaled up to an animal longer than a bus. One of its unusual features was a bulbous structure at the end of its snout. Scientists are still not completely sure what it was used for, but it may have played a role in sound, smell, or display. Sarcosuchus was not a true crocodile in the modern sense, but it filled a similar ecological role on a gigantic scale. It was the riverbank nightmare of the dinosaur age. 12. Deinosuchus. If Sarcosuchus was the super croc, Deinosuchus was another monster from the same terrifying idea. What if a crocodile-like predator became large enough to threaten dinosaurs? Deinosuchus lived in North America during the late Cretaceous period. It was related to modern alligators and crocodiles, and some individuals may have reached around 30 feet or more in length. Its name means terrible crocodile, which feels very honest. Unlike some predators that needed speed, Deinosuchus relied on ambush. It lived near coastal waterways, rivers, and wetlands, waiting for prey to approach the edge. Its skull was massive, and its bite force was likely extreme. Fossil evidence suggests that Deinosuchus may have bitten dinosaurs. Some dinosaur bones show tooth marks that match large crocodilian teeth, supporting the idea that this predator attacked or scavenged dinosaurs that came too close to the water. That is what makes Deinosuchus so unsettling. On land, a dinosaur might have been powerful. At the water's edge, the rules changed completely. Deinosuchus could launch from below, clamp down with crushing jaws, and drag prey into the water. It was not built for a fair fight. It was built for surprise. While tyrannosaurs ruled parts of the land, Deinosuchus ruled the border between land and water. And in that border zone, even dinosaurs had reason to fear. 13. Hyaenodon. Hyaenodon may sound like it was related to hyenas, but it was not a true hyena at all. It belonged to an extinct group of carnivorous mammals called creodonts. These animals lived after the dinosaurs, during a time when mammals were rapidly evolving into new shapes, sizes, and hunting roles. Hyaenodon was one of the most successful predators of that world. Different species of Hyaenodon varied in size. Some were relatively small, while others grew as large as modern big cats or even larger. They had long skulls, powerful jaws, and sharp teeth designed for slicing meat. Unlike modern carnivores, Hyaenodon had a skull that could seem almost oversized compared with its body. This gave it a fearsome bite and a profile that looked strange by modern standards. It was not a dog, not a cat, and not a hyena. It was something from an earlier chapter of mammal evolution. Hyaenodon likely hunted a variety of prey, from smaller mammals to larger herbivores. It may also have scavenged when opportunities appeared. In many ecosystems, it would have been one of the top predators, but eventually, creodonts declined as modern carnivorous mammals became more successful. Dogs, cats, bears, and hyenas belonged to a different evolutionary branch, and over time, they took over many predator roles. Hyaenodon was a reminder that mammal predators did not always look familiar. Before lions and wolves, there were stranger hunters wearing the crown. 14. Thylacoleo. Thylacoleo is often called the marsupial lion, but once again, that nickname only tells part of the story. It was not a true lion. It was a marsupial predator that lived in ancient Australia, and it may have been one of the most powerful mammalian predators of its size. Thylacoleo had a compact, muscular body, strong limbs, and incredibly powerful jaws. Its teeth were unusual. Instead of the slicing teeth seen in cats, it had enlarged blade-like premolars that worked almost like cutting tools. Its bite was extremely strong relative to its body size. This predator likely hunted large Australian megafauna, possibly ambushing prey from trees or dense cover. Its strong forelimbs and retractable claws may have helped it grip victims, while its jaws delivered deep cutting bites. One of the most interesting things about Thylacoleo is how different it was from predators elsewhere in the world. Australia's isolation allowed marsupials to evolve into roles filled by placental mammals on other continents. So instead of lions, wolves, or saber-toothed cats, Australia produced its own version of a top mammalian hunter. Thylacoleo vanished during the late Pleistocene, around the same broad period when many large Australian animals disappeared. Climate change and human activity may both have contributed. It was not the biggest predator on this list, But pound for pound, Thylacoleo may have been one of the most formidable. Australia did not need lions. It had already built something stranger. 15. Andrewsarchus. Andrewsarchus is one of the most mysterious predators in the fossil record, partly because it is known mainly from a massive skull. That skull was discovered in Mongolia and suggested an animal with a huge head, powerful jaws, and a body that may have been much larger than most mammalian predators. For a long time, Andrewsarchus was often imagined as a gigantic wolf-like carnivore, but modern interpretations are more cautious. It may have been related to hoofed mammals, possibly closer in the broad evolutionary tree to animals like whales and hippos than to dogs or cats. That sounds strange, but evolution is full of surprises. Because we do not have a complete skeleton, scientists still debate what Andrewsarchus really looked like and how it lived. It may have been an active predator, a scavenger, or an omnivore that ate meat when available. Its enormous jaws could have helped crush bones, tear flesh, or process tough foods. What makes Andrewsarchus so fascinating is not just its possible size, but the mystery around it. It represents a time after the dinosaurs when mammals were experimenting with many different lifestyles. Some became grazers, some became swimmers, some became hunters, and some, like Andrewsarchus, became something difficult to neatly categorize. It may not have been the wolf monster older books imagined, but it was still an enormous, powerful mammal from a lost world, and its skull alone is enough to earn its place in the extinct archives. Extinct predators were not just monsters from the past. They were proof that evolution once built hunters in forms we may never see again. Saber teeth, crushing jaws, armored skulls, giant bodies, and ocean-sized ambition. Some vanished when climates changed. Some disappeared with their prey. Others were erased by mass extinction, but fossils remember what the living world forgets. Every tooth, claw, and skull is a message from a lost world, and this was only the first file.